Today's episode's brought to you by Razer. No, literally, not a joke. We're actually affiliated now.
It's high noon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to High Noon Podcast, the competitive Overwatch podcast. I'm your host, Blevins. With me, as always, is Deathblow. What's up, buddy?
Oh, not too much. There was a football game that made me a very happy man yesterday, so it's been a good week on the overall, despite some Overwatch disappointment.
Made me a pretty happy man as well, because now football's over, so I don't have to worry about it anymore.
I know, and honestly, this is a weird spot for me because I feel a little bit the same way because I'm so hyped about Overwatch League and everything that's going on.
Yep.
I just wanted to stop splitting my attention and be able to really focus. So I expect, a marked improvement in Pick'em for me. My fantasy performance will be better. I'm coming for all you guys and all the silly little stupid games we're playing. I'm going to win them.
Well, I'm currently winning in Pick'em, so, well, not overall, just between
you were wrong. Just because you were wrong.
If being wrong is wrong, I don't know how to finish that, but we've got a lot to talk about, so let's jump right into it. We've got some new patrons, new patron hype. We got Giose at the $3 level. Giose has been a big Discord player, and I think we played with him in. We played a couple games with him the other night too. But
we got two in, yeah.
Yeah.
Good time.
We got a message from him, which I'm going to begrudgingly read. But he says, been listening to Blevins and Deathblow since my switch from console to PC and have loved all the shows High Noon Podcast has to offer. I play in their High Noon Pick'em League and have a fantasy league where I beat Deathblow in week 3. Shields up, stay hydrated, and play with me. Geospatial hashtag 11605, and then he says hashtag GLA greater than Houston, hashtag GLA greater than NYXL. So
as you can tell, when you become a patron, facts and verifiable information is not required.
Thrown right out the window.
You can troll us into the ground, as Geo has very aptly done. So congratulations to you, good sir. However, you're gonna have to find new people to play with because we're both banned.
Yeah, banned for life. But no, but for real.
Well, I'm gonna delete them from my friends list.
Yeah. But for real, really thankful. And we also had another $3 patron in Nameless, another big Discord member, I believe a Fuel fan, maybe gotten in a couple
to fight me.
Yeah, I was gonna say
couple Discord.
one of the many people that fights Deathblow in Discord, defending the Fuel.
I'm gonna say this too. You don't have to defend him much with me because I'm on the Fuel rebound bandwagon. But Nameless, I feel like it was right after our big AKM blow up where we went at it for like, I don't even know, it was like 2 days. It was right after that he subscribed. So if you guys love to argue about these things and you think I'm an idiot, especially because I'm very active whenever anybody wants to pick a fight with me, by all means, join the Discord. It's been a lot of fun. I love getting to spar with you guys a little bit. It helps clarify my thoughts before the show.
Yep.
From the greedy aspect of it, where you're helping me when I argue with you. But it's been a lot of fun. So big thanks to both Geo and Nameless. Big shout outs. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, and guys, if you do want to get your message read or do whatever you want with financially supporting us, head over to patreon.com/highnoonpodcast. So like I mentioned at the top of the show, we are actually a Razer affiliate now. So I'm going to be spamming out those links as soon as I get those situated. As of our recording, I haven't figured it out yet, but that will be that will very soon be remedied. So if you're thinking about getting a new mouse or keyboard or whatever, or you're thinking about getting some more Razer stuff, let us know. Use our link. It will help us out tremendously. And the more stuff that we do with them, I think the more the relationship builds, and then we can start doing more stuff, maybe get some giveaways and stuff. I don't know if that's how it works. It probably does. I mean, you build a relationship with them,
sense,
right?
You're bringing in business, they're bound to do more for you.
Right. So the more that we do for them, the more that they're going to do for us. So, and if you're going to be buying stuff, Razer stuff anyway, you know, it will help us out a lot. So, huge shout outs to Razer for that. And, yeah, if you have any questions about that, or if you're thinking about it, honestly, like I probably said this before we became an affiliate, but I love my Razer products. I had the same Razer mouse for like 10 years, and I literally, the only reason I replaced it was because I literally like wore it down with my hand. Not that it stopped working. It literally, like, all of the like rubber stuff came off of it from overuse.
Right.
Mouse still works great. It's just disgusting from all the Cheeto and Dorito dust and garbage that's on it. But
my original Death Adder was the same way. Like, I think I had it for close to 10 years. Lasted a really, really long time. So definitely some quality stuff over there from Razer. And listen, you know, they're not we're not shelling out for them like crazy or anything like that. But if you're gonna be buying a Razer product anyways,
right,
make sure you check over to the website. And listen, if the links aren't up and you want to help us out, tweet at us. It just means Blevins is still trying to
dumb. It's still dumb. I'm pretty sure it's easy to do, but
it should be.
Yeah. So, real quick recap of the stuff that we've done. I'm getting the audio ticker out now. Reason it's delayed is because I know, guys, I know I messed it up last week. The music was way too loud. So, working on A, the volume of that in general, and B, we've got some ideas for some new music, because I know Deathblow hates the song. A lot of people
despise dubstep.
Yeah. So we actually have some pretty cool audio jungle music that we're potentially going to be using, so that's going to be great. We just put out the top 10 plays of the week video. Huge shout outs to Morai. I think I got it right. Let me know if I got it wrong. I know I got it right. So huge shout outs to her for putting that out. It was a good one this week too. I put out my power rankings right up. I actually got that out only slightly late. And I put out another article that I titled "Don't Blame Clockwork."
More on that later.
Yeah, more on that in a little bit. The big and then one other thing, we didn't do foul play this week because there was an American holiday known as the Super Bowl. But that's going to be coming back next week. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is if you haven't seen it, although the numbers show that you likely have seen it, but if you haven't seen it, go back, and actually even if you have, go back and watch around the last Around the Payload episode we did. We had A Smith, we had Uber, we had Nuki, and we had Chanman V on the show. I thought I was going to forget someone, but I didn't.
I thought you were going to do.
I was really.
I was trying to remember them all to save you. I didn't get there in time.
Nope, so I was really blanking on Chanman until I didn't. I mean, I was blanking on Uber. No, I mean, I was okay.
Blanking on you.
I was blanking on me. I forgot who the host was. But that is our most viewed video of all time. It's currently at like a little over 5K views. So
5.5. So
yeah. Shout outs to everyone who's watched it and tweeted it. Shout outs to the guests. And if you haven't watched it, like seriously, not even because like if I saw this, we would be talking about this episode even if it wasn't done by us, because it was such a good episode. You need to go watch it. There's like
it was closely contested. You could even say that the outcome was tighter than a fish's butthole.
Spoilers. But yeah, it had many clippable moments from that episode. So
also, I just want to point out how much weirder that phrase sounds when an American says it as opposed to when an Australian says it. But
yeah,
I don't care. I
just feel weird now. But when I won't even spoil who said it. If you can't guess, just go home. But definitely watch that out. I don't even have anything more to say about it. That was just as much as I could say. And last thing, obviously, our giveaway is very quickly coming up. Like next week is when we're going to be announcing the giveaway winner for stage 1. So if you haven't done it already, go to our Twitter, our pinned tweet, retweet that, do all the stuff in the Gleam link. Make sure you do that as soon as possible. You no longer lazy podcast listener who hears this every week and hasn't gone to our pinned tweet and gone to the Gleam link. This is your last chance. No, it won't. I don't think it will be too late by the time you hear this, podcast listener person. But there.
We'll draw it on probably Sunday, right? Because we got to wait for the close of the stage. So either Saturday night or
I'm
Sunday,
just trying to think of when I made this contest a long time ago, and I don't remember what date I had it end at. So just do it now.
Yeah, better safe than sorry.
Yeah, just do it now. Is what it boils down to. And then of course go to the Pick'em page. Remember to do that. highnoonpick'em.com. Go to the featured tab. All that good stuff. But let's move on. Death, you already talked a little bit about what you did with the Super Bowl. Anything else fun and exciting?
No, I mean everything for me is about the Super Bowl, right? I mean that pack of cheaters over there in New England, owned by Mr. Bobby Kraft, get to go limping home as losers, just like 30 other teams had to do this year. So really, really excited about that. A big victory for really all of mankind. Justice, goodness, and honesty. All caught a big win yesterday in that game. So obviously had a really good time watching that. I did have some friends over to watch Overwatch League on Saturday, and man, those games just weren't super closely contested. But I will say this, they were pretty into it, like with no knowledge. Like they were even telling me after the fact, like, I'm surprised how hyped that was. Like that was a pretty cool thing.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping I piqued their interest a little bit. They get to keep watching it. I went over, actually, I did a lot of like watching Overwatch League at other people's houses. I'm trying to not be such a hermit. And now that we're structuring the show a little differently so that I don't need such detailed notes on all the matchups, I've been trying to like go out and watch with other people a little bit to just get to see some people, because man, I'm never going to hang out with anybody if I don't start watching Overwatch League with my friends. We got a busy schedule, so I've been trying to work that in. So shout outs to Clay and John and Chris and Vinny, who none of which will be listening to this, but nonetheless,
they should be scumbags.
Yeah,
I mean, I obviously was watching some Overwatch as well. I saw a Bandits game, which for those of you who don't know is a Major League Lacrosse team. I went to the away game in Rochester, which is very close. It's basically a second home game. Met up with Phelan. Old time podcast listeners will recognize Phelan as one of the founding fathers of High Noon Podcast. So that was cool. Had a garbage plate, so suck it, Death.
Scum.
But one thing I want to do that I don't think I'm going to be able to for the stage 1 playoffs, because I thought they were next week and not this week, is I want to get a meetup, at least one meetup at a place to watch Overwatch League, like in public. So if you're in the greater Buffalo area and you want to meet up and watch Overwatch League at a place, let me know. I got a little bit of interest on the Buffalo subreddit. So I think there's probably enough people. I don't really care how many people come. I just got to talk to some places. I'm going to do that this week. So yeah. Oh, and the other update I wanted to say is that I'm going to actually be uploading the podcast earlier now. So shout outs to Icarium for yelling at us for that, saying that I started uploading it later, even though that's not the case. And he looked back and realized it wasn't, but even so, I'm going to just right when we're done recording, I'm just going to upload right away so that you guys have plenty of time to listen and digest before Overwatch League starts, instead of having to rush through and maybe not listen. So
yeah, we were sitting on it a day and releasing it on Wednesday. So we're just gonna, in this way, it'll work out nicer too, right? Because now on Mondays you'll get Foul Play. That'll be there for you Monday morning. Then on Tuesday morning, you'll have the flagship show. And then on Wednesday morning, you will have the Around the Payload episode. So everything should be spaced out perfectly for you guys now. And listen, we tell you guys we're always open to suggestions on the show. We actively love when you guys help us improve the show. So it's all happened from Discord. I'm sure most of you are in there now because the numbers on that Discord just keep getting bigger and bigger. And but we really appreciate it. And if you ever have any ideas, we're always willing to hear you out. We don't take every idea, but we do consider every idea and weigh it and give it some serious conversation between us. So.
Yeah, always, even if it's something silly, or I've been getting a lot of, I always get a lot of like, hey man, the audio on this was awful. I really do appreciate those, because I'm not going to make it better if I don't know, because I'm too lazy to.
Even if they're repeats, right? Like you're thinking to yourself, well, they already know, right? Somebody had to have
I
told
probably don't.
The more complaints we get about it, the more of a shot in the gut it is to like, hey, make sure this never happens again.
Yeah.
So never feel bad or awkward about it.
Yeah, don't feel bad. If there's someone that needs to feel bad, it's me, because
Yes.
I messed something up, which is usually the case. But let's move right along and go to my favorite segment of the show still.
Overwatch Today meme of the week.
That, of course, is the Overwatch Today meme of the week. Not provided by Overwatch Today this week, but actually provided by me by accident. So really provided by highnoonpodcast.com. So
with an assistant from an assist from my awful web development skills, and I didn't even know I was doing this to you, but apparently it was phenomenal.
Yeah, so the long and short of it is I wrote a little bit of a recap of the Houston Outlaws versus Seoul Dynasty match. I started writing it because like I watched the whole match, like pretty detailed, was writing notes, and I was doing my little live video thing at different points on Instagram. So definitely check out the Instagram, because when I get a chance, if I'm watching the match live, I'm going to do my little like comments and stuff. I really like doing it. I hope you guys do too. But I had a lot of information, and I had this match fresh, so I wrote up this piece, and the takeaway from it ended up being like a lot of people are going to complain about Clockwork and how Linkser was sick and yada yada yada. I'm like, don't blame Clockwork. It wasn't necessarily his fault, and I write about that in the piece. You can check that out at highnoonpodcast.com. Go to the blogs tab. But
If you want to hear wrong things,
right? It's an op-ed piece. It's
we'll
opinion.
be talking more about it later.
It's opinion. So I don't like when I post it in the staff chat. I want to be like, okay, edit this for like errors, not opinion errors. But it was, so the title of it is "Don't Blame Clockwork." I made this graphic. It has Clockwork's picture, and it says "Don't blame Clockwork." It was actually kind of nice, not great or anything. It was kind of nice. I posted it as the picture for the article, and the way that the formatting for the website is the picture is just the blame part, and it's right like over Clockwork's face. So the title is "Don't Blame Clockwork," and then the picture just says blame and then Clockwork's face. So epic fail on my part, and getting trolled
too good to fix
retroactively.
though, so I'm pretty sure it still sits there.
Way
the
too
same
good to
image.
fix. There's
Yeah.
no way I'm fixing that. It was just too hilarious.
Poor Clockwork.
Rip Clockwork. But we'll talk more about that in a little bit. We have a couple of pieces of news. So the big one this week, at least this far, is that Florida Mayhem have signed Zappis, the flex tank player formerly of Gigante. So that's going to be a big one for them. Death, any off the cuff comments or thoughts on how this is going to help Florida?
Sure. So I think he's going to be listed as a flex player because he's among the most flexible players in competitive Overwatch. He's played multiple different roles, kind of like Nevix, but I think he's played them at a bit of a higher level, like with more consistency than Nevix has. So I think this is going to be a really big addition for them. The big question here is, how does Zappis fit into this lineup? Because it's an easy argument to make that Manitin has been among their best players so far throughout Overwatch League. So this is, on the surface, it looks like somebody that's going to come in and compete with him for playing time. I don't necessarily think that's the case. Listen, we've seen Zappis play a lot of Tracer in the past, so I think he could very well slide into the Logic's role, see if that has any, better effect on team chemistry. But team chemistry is another thing to think of and really weigh here, because when you look at a player like Manitin, it's a lot like when your Widowmaker's popping off in solo queue, right? Like you're doing really, really well, but your team's never capturing the point. Well, Widowmaker doesn't pressure the point, right? So you might be getting kills and doing a lot in the kill feed, but still hurting your team on the overall, right? So Manitin might not be the problem here, but they might have better team chemistry on the overall if you replace him with Zappis. So I do expect some experimentation here, but my gut is that Zappis comes in over Logic's if there's a heavy tank meta where they might want to switch a lot and cover more tank roles.
Yeah, triple tank.
So I think there's a lot of viability to using him there as both an off tank, backup as well as a starting DPS player, just because he gives you that flexibility. So yeah, I don't know. I think this is going to be a high impact signing for Florida. It's really difficult to know exactly where he fills in because of how just outright flexible he is and how adept he is at just about every role we've seen him play. But I would think, he's going to compete with Logics for playing time. It's going to be hard to take Tavik out just on name power alone. Like I think the fans would be pretty upset to see him not play when they're struggling. So yeah, I would expect maybe him to play in for Logics, maybe a little bit for Manitin, and probably be a big factor in any triple tank, compositions they want.
Yeah, so the one thing we should probably factor in here is that the CEO of Mayhem, Ben Spoon, says that he tweeted out that there's more news to come this week. So maybe that's more signings. Maybe that's we don't know. There's just more news to come. So
we don't know, and we're not going to report much on speculation. But this one seems pretty close to. It's not verifiable. I'll just tell you what it was. Rob420, a name that we've seen a lot in competitive Overwatch so far, tweeted out a picture of can't wait to get back into the swing of things. And then it was a picture of the Anna skin for the Florida Mayhem. So it's looking like he might be headed over there. We don't know for sure. It could be a university team signing, something along those lines. But it supports what Ben, it could be nothing too. It could just be he likes that skin.
The stars are lining up.
Right, but yeah, it's with Ben saying there's going to be more. It looks fairly likely. I think Rob was actually taken in our 3-man draft. I think I took him on my team.
Yeah, I think you did
because you took Dogman. So definitely one of the higher end, flex support options available, especially if you don't want to bring in Korean talent. Which I don't know that that's Florida's plan here, but I don't think Korean players want to go there, right? Because they're having infrastructure problems, and Koreans are pretty spoiled by having great infrastructure. So might not be a great fit for them to bring in Korean. So this, it would make a lot of sense for Rob to go there, but definitely Zappos makes a lot of sense. I think he was my first pick in those in that draft exercise we did in the preseason. So Florida making moves, picking up good players so far. If the second one holds true, I think that'll be another solid addition. But yeah, I'm expecting even more than just 2. I'm expecting 3 to 4 players here.
Yeah, I think what they do. So Florida has. They have Tavik, and they have Zappos, both very, and I mean, to an extent, Swoosh has been he hasn't been flexible lately, but we know he is flexible because he went from a DPS role to a tank role. I think what they need to do is take these flexible players, and instead of having Tavik be a 8 out of 10 on all 26 heroes, have him be a 13 out of 10 on Widowmaker, have him be a 14 out of 10 on Genji. I think that's what it's shaping up to be. Have your team be flexible so that if you want to run triple tank, you can. You've got Zappos, you've got Swoosh, you've got Manitin, you can run triple tank, and then have Tavik play. Maybe Tavik is the one that stays flexible so that he can play in the meta or he can play on the team no matter what the meta is, and have Logics just grind nothing but Tracer or grind nothing but McCree Tracer, so that maps where you want McCree Tracer, he's in. Maps where you don't, he's out. Kind of like New York is doing with Pine, and we've seen other teams as well just have these specialists. I think that's kind of what we're seeing be the case for a lot of these teams. Like New York, it's almost like who is their star? I mean, I guess Libero is the one that plays all the time. Sometimes SBB. I mean, it's usually Libero SBB, but maybe potentially we see Pine. Pine did start this week. Maybe we start to see that a little bit more. I don't know.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. The flexibility in hero pool, we've talked about that like a big boost when we did that draft. I really valued it. But just because you have flexible players doesn't mean you want to spread out their practice time.
Right. You can only play one hero at a time.
Right. And the meta's shown, especially this meta, that, there's a finite number of heroes that you need each DPS role to be able to play. So a varying hero pool and a deep hero pool is great and super, super helpful. But you still probably want them to focus right now on what's good in this meta and what they need to be playing. And then when you jump to a new meta, yes, they can shift their focus and still play it at a high level, but their immediate practice needs to be centered. And I wonder how many teams are, playing off the wall compositions and scrims and things like that just to keep up practice on hero pool. Probably not a lot, but you never know.
Right. It'll definitely be interesting. It's going to be hard to form a solid opinion on what Florida's going to do without knowing what the full roster is going to be looking like going into stage 2. So we'll keep it at that. And we'll keep you updated with anything that comes up. But we are going to move right along. It's tournament talk. So normally I would have the match ticker, but we're still changing that. So we're just going to go through. Do you want me to run through them all and then we'll talk about them, or do you want to do them one at a time?
You know, we might as well do them one at a time so we can kind of give a couple takeaways here as we go. What do you want to do? Alternate matches, alternate days? It's completely up to you. I'll just read the match and then you can take a point and then I'll make a counterpoint or something like that. So we saw on Wednesday, starting it off, we saw LA Valiant beat Philadelphia Fusion 4-0. Yeah, I've talked about which Philly team's going to show up, and they really highlighted that this week. I think they're just a super inconsistent team. They were sleeping through the match versus the LA Valiant to start off the week. So we caught the bad Philadelphia Fusion. There's not much to say here. You know, they show up or they don't. They can beat anybody at any given day. I believe that there's no team that's safe, and they have it in them to lose to everybody on on any given day. It's they're the hardest. You know, they're a nightmare for pick'em. So good luck trying to figure it out. It's going to be brutal. We'll be right there with you. But yeah, I don't know. There's not much takeaway when one of the teams basically stays in the locker room.
Yeah, it is definitely tough. And I had a point about Philly, but I don't remember it, so it probably wasn't that good. So let's move on. Oh no, I don't remember what it was. This is me saying, hey, all you people that bring up the transitive property and like, oh well, so Philadelphia beat New York Excelsior, so therefore, and then that. Shut up, no. Because now there's multiple paradoxes behind that, so shut up about that. Unless you're doing it ironically, in which case keep bringing it. But I think a lot of people weren't. So moving along, we saw LA Gladiators defeat Florida Mayhem 3-1. Anything to take away from this, Steph?
A little bit. LA, I mean, obviously looked better in this matchup getting the win. They did win the first 3 maps, so the one they lost, they really didn't have to really compete for anymore. But the one thing I want to say is they lost on Junkertown, and man, they have a worse win percentage than the Shanghai Dragons on escort maps. Only 1-7 on the stage so far. Shanghai's at 2-6 to give you that frame of reference. So have yet to win on Junkertown. Definitely something to keep an eye on going forward. Do not expect them to be able to 4-0 very many teams, because that's going to mean getting it figured out on payload. So until we see them string a couple payload map wins together, we have to assume they're going to lose one here going forward.
Yeah, there's a couple of teams in the same ballpark. LA Gladiators, I think maybe Boston is kind of upgraded out of it, and LA Valiant is going back down into it. LA Gladiators, maybe LA Valiant, San Francisco Shock. Maybe like at the very bottom, you've got a Shanghai Dragons. Probably not Florida Mayhem. I think I put Mayhem below Dragons at this point. But where it's just like they just are like who knows what they're gonna do? They're just lackluster. They've beaten some teams pretty handily, but they've just lost. It's just not. I don't know. It's just a gut feeling. Every time I see LA Gladiators, I'm just like nothing about them excites me at all. Like I just can't, unless it's like something like against the Mayhem or against Shanghai. I just don't see them winning. Like
yeah, I mean they took down the Valiant though, right, in the battle for LA, didn't they?
They started out strong and then they got reverse sweep. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean they've shown in flashes, and I was really high on them after their initial, but they're coming down, right? They're not on the incline anymore. Like they started out better than we expected and moved up for the first couple matches and kept getting better, but things have really leveled off with them a little bit, and they do seem a little bit underwhelming. And it really does make me nervous when you see these teams unable to close out these 4-0s. They had no reason. I don't care what your map record was in Junkertown before you went into this match. You had a beaten team at your disposal, and you couldn't close it out, and that makes such a big difference. We're starting to see it now. We're going to be talking about what teams need to do in order to make the stage playoffs. So, we're going to see how the map record matters a lot. A lot. Really unfortunate we don't know what that is, but it's going to get even worse, right? Like these teams aren't breaking off into huge differences when we look at the standings. So you could honestly be looking at 4 teams locked into a tie for 2 playoff spots at the end of 40 games. And you can't blink an eye at that, and you have to be prepared for it, and you have to do what you can throughout the season to put yourself in the best situation possible. And teams like LA right now, listen, they got a worse map record than the San Francisco Shock, who I think a lot of people count as, above the current state of Dallas, above Florida and Shanghai, but far from a playoff team at the moment. So that's definitely something they need to work on going forward. And I think they definitely need to make some additions to the team just to help increase their strategy, bring in some more brains into that room to help devise strategies that will only help them.
Yeah, I think this signing period is going to be, let's bring in some specialists. Like, that seems to be, the Pine method almost is what I'm coining the phrase as. Is have these star players who are absolutely phenomenal at one hero or 2 heroes or a certain situation, a type of map. Have those people who that's all they do. Pine played Tracer, against Shanghai. I'm taking that with exactly 1 grain of salt that he played all those maps. But like, have the people bring on the players that are like, okay, this is my Widowmaker. When we need Widowmaker, they're the person. When we need X, Y, and Z for this type of map, we bring in this person, and they're the closer, they're the specialist. I think we're gonna see that more. But let's move on. Last match of Wednesday, we saw Houston Outlaws beat San Francisco Shock 3-1. What's the takeaway?
Oh, the takeaway is this is a slightly different team without Linkser in it, because he was sick and did not participate in any of the matchups this weekend. And honestly, though, given the 3-1 score, it did end the map streak record. I don't think it would have ended had they been at full strength, to be clear. But either way, listen, and Houston said as much in there, and I know people didn't really believe me when I said it, but we can only take them take their words at face value when they do things like put on press conferences. They have not scrimmed with Clockwork since week 1.
Yeah.
He has been uninvolved in the actual scrim time. This was something they really weren't prepared for, this wasn't a map they played, but they went on to say, like, they've literally never once played Horizon Lunar Colony with Clockwork in there. Like, he was not part of the plan in stage 1 to play, so he wasn't in the scrims. And it hurt them. Obviously, controls their weakest game mode. That's the one they lost to San Francisco. But on the overall, listen, I got a lot of confidence in Clockwork that if he's needed, he can step in and play an adequate role, which is something we didn't really see in week 1. Whether that was because he came in for 1 map and he was cold, we don't know. All we can do is judge the play we saw, and it wasn't great. But there were times, and especially against San Francisco, I was even worried, will he be able to match up with Baby Bay? We don't really see a lot of the Clock Widow, but we saw it here, and he did it really well. The team was able to function, was able to execute their strategies, but so many of their strategies are like, well, we've got the best Widowmaker in the world, so we're gonna stand here behind this shield, and then he's gonna kill 1 or 2 people, and then we'll go in. Like, that's the strategy right now in these Widowmaker compositions. It's called waiting for picks. You just hang out, you're patient, you're smart, you try to punish people that overextend, and you let your Widowmaker do its thing. And there's a definite downgrade in Widowmaker play. It forced them into some different compositions, but all things being said, this even helped me feel more confident about them for future metas, right? Like, they were playing Soldier 76 in places where they would normally never play one, right? Because Linkser wouldn't normally do that. We saw Jake play just all the Tracer, which it was a little strange, right? Because Clockwork was a Tracer specialist, and that's what he looked weakest on. So for being a Tracer specialist, I wasn't super surprised, but even if that meant Clockwork on Pharah, that's what they were doing. So it was a really interesting look at the Outlaws team. It was a great way to see, how much the synergy and the work of the tanks and the supports do to bring out the best in the DPS players. Because Clockwork had some great moments in this match, especially, but he had some good moments even against Fleta and stuff in the matchup. We'll talk about in a little bit. So listen, I'm excited as a Houston fan. I was perfectly happy with this win. We'll talk about the other side of the coin.
It just seems weird that, like, so we had the criticism of in the first week of Overwatch League, like, why are you taking out Linkser? Why are you taking out Jake? What is wrong with you? Like, stop it. Like, we basically had that exact conversation in week 1 when they lost, and they were taking out their best players for whatever reason. So they adjusted to that. Obviously, until Linkser got sick, I don't think ever came out. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I think that's the case. Never came out, and they won. They didn't even lose a map when that. They literally never lost a map when that happened. Now, I get that. I think that was a great decision. Obviously, paid off huge dividends. The problem is like, I don't think that means you should stop using your other players at all. Like, how is he not? Clockwork's not getting scrim time. Like,
I mean, why would he if your plan isn't to use him? Then I mean, at this point in the season,
I guess you don't plan on people getting sick. Like, you never I guess
to me it becomes about, like, does the coaching staff have the game plan in place for, what does this team default to? Maybe they were able to, like, lean on their early practice and scrim times and footage and use that to kind of develop the plan and the strategy. But it's definitely, I mean, it's a tightrope act to try to balance it all and to figure out the perfect balance. And there's no way these teams have it right yet. But in Houston's case, I mean, you're looking at trying to win out on the stage so that you make it into the playoffs. And do you really want to give that up? And listen, when you look at, they were able to take San Francisco. So if you need him for one game, you feel confident that you can bring him in, plug him in, because he's there watching, right? He's there in the meetings. He knows the plans, the strats. He just doesn't have the experience, and you don't have the experience of adapting to his hero pool on the fly in the game. Something that definitely stood out in this matchup on the control side of things. It was just, they were lost. Like, they just didn't quite get it. I think they did take a point there. I don't know. I could be wrong. I shouldn't even say it. But I don't know. It was just kind of one of those things. There's no right answer, right? Because as soon as you need him, you're wrong for not doing it.
Right.
But if you don't need him, you're wrong for wasting the time. So it's tough on this short notice and how young this season is. It's one of those things. Maybe they work him in a little bit during the downtime in between stages, right? To get him a little acclimated, get the team used to it. But it's just an impossible task, I think, to prioritize. What if one person gets sick? Because what if it was Jake? Would they have brought the same guy? I mean, they didn't have Mendo available either. He was out with his wisdom teeth. But it just would have been a whole different dynamic and a whole different set of challenges. So to drop Linkser and then have it go the other way, and Jake's the one that gets sick, it's like you didn't really do anything either. So
and I guess there's still, like, I would have to, like, see what their schedules are in terms of playing, because, like, they have practices and then they have scrims, right? It's probably not the same thing. So it'll be interesting. I mean, I think internal scrims are probably going to be huge moving forward, because then you don't have to rely on other teams. You don't have to rely on them sandbagging, give blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, no, I guess that when you put it like that, I don't put too much blame on Houston. It's just unfortunate that happened. And it's like they got caught with their pants down at literally the worst possible time to do so in terms of Linkser being sick.
Yeah, only 1 week could have been worse, and that's next week. So hopefully we've got him.
Hopefully they got him. But let's move on to Thursday. We saw Fusion. This time, the other Fusion team showed up and beat Dallas Fuel 4-0. Any takeaways from this one?
I mean, it's a little easy to look at this and go, well, they got crushed by the good team and they crushed the bad team. But I mean, Dallas is in mid rebound, right? Like we saw Taimu all this weekend. He was back in, so they seem to be rolling with the starters, finger quote starters, where however you want to look at it. But listen, I think Philadelphia, either they make all the room in the world that they need for Carpe and Shadowburn to just go crazy and murder everybody, or they don't. And when they don't, it looks bad. And when they do, it looks phenomenal. So listen, they're doing this thing where they're not playing Poco and they're playing Hotba instead. I don't know how I feel about that. But
did they have a public statement about why that was? Was he sick, or was he? I know everyone in the Overwatch League is like getting sick right now.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, but no, we haven't heard anything like that. Like no announcements that he was going to be out or sick. Just here's our starters for the day. And somebody told me, and it was like watching Poco's stream, that he just hasn't been performing well lately or something like that. So who knows if it's temporary or if it's permanent. But I've got to say, these Western players, like the Korean players, are really consistent. So at the end of the day, if you're ceding playing time now for any reason, it's going to be hard to get that back, right? Because you've got to really, really stand out. And Poco did really stand out earlier, but it's a thinker for sure. I don't know if I would do it, but it's the route they're going. And
Yeah.
I guess when you're really, really inconsistent anyways, right? Like they haven't actually seen a difference in result. Like they've been wildly inconsistent with Poco and wildly inconsistent without him now. So maybe he's not the problem, and they're just trying to bring in more even keeled, like, you know, steady players to try to right the ship. I don't know, but Philly's got to figure it out, right? Because right now they currently, if they were just a little bit less inconsistent, and by that I mean when they lost, didn't lose 4-0 every single time, they would be in a very good position to, you know, have an outside shot or a puncher's chance at making it into the stage playoffs. But yeah, I don't know. Not many takeaways here for me. Dallas clearly still reeling and looking for the answer. Philly should be a team they should at least be very competitive with, but it just wasn't the case this week.
Yeah, it's interesting for them. It's an enigma. But let's move on. We've got NYXL beat Shanghai Dragons 4-0. The only takeaway that I can think of is that Pine started. Is there anything else to even talk about?
I did have a fantasy matchup where my team was so bad that I played him, and it was phenomenal for me. So that was a pretty cool takeaway. But no, not really a lot to take from this one. Shanghai will continue to be reeling and struggling until they can make some additions and work them in.
Yeah, not
Also, New York's really good. Newsflash.
Yeah, surprisingly enough. Not surprising at all. And then here's the real, I think, the thunker for the week.
Yeah.
London Spitfire 4-0 versus Seoul Dynasty.
Yeah, because why play Jaehong, right? Like, is he even any good? I don't think you need him. You can just roll Guido out there. When asked about that decision, they said they thought Guido's skill set was better suited to beat the London Spitfire.
Wrong.
Listen, I love Guido. Guido's awesome. I've watched him stream. He's an incredible support player, making that transition over into that. Wrong. Like you said, just wrong. Like, what are you doing? Jaehong's like the best flex support in the league.
Second best.
No, the best. He might not be the best Zenyatta in the league, but
Okay.
Until I see Jonak's Ana come anywhere near his Ana, I've got to just plug him in as.
But I think whatever. I think what Seoul Dynasty, I think what Seoul Dynasty really did was they saw that I first picked Jaehong #1 overall in our new point scoring fantasy league, and they're like, oh. Overwatch League is like, well, we watched the video, and before when I first picked Taimu, they're like, oh no, he can't play. No, sit him, bench him. They call up Hastro. Nate,
you will sit him.
Nate goes, hey Hastro, sit Taimu. Click. Ominous phone call. Then calls up Kevin Chu. Hey Kevin, sit Jaehong against London. Wait, what? Click off. No questions asked. Jaehong sits, Taimu sits. So if you're whenever I first pick someone in a live draft, they will not play the next week, guaranteed. I'm 2 for 2 on this. So
yeah, and for what it's worth, like there was some questions here, and people were wondering, like, what are they thinking? Why are they doing this to their lineup? London had some interesting substitutional choices as well. It was a little bit weird. They brought in more of the GC Busan roster, things like that, but like it worked for them. So we can see why they did it, and it continued to work for them later in the week too. So it's tough to know. I mean, when I'm watching it and I'm looking at it, it made so little sense, the lineups that were chosen to me. I'm like, did they just like make a gentleman's agreement to like play B team against B team?
Well, the GC Busan roster makes a lot of sense because GC Busan is the team that beat Lunatic High in Apex, and the reason they beat them was not because they were more skilled. It was because they game planned against them specifically and just completely countered their strategy. So
yeah, and we saw a carryover of that for sure here, but I mean, it was definitely a drastically different, Lunatic High or Seoul Dynasty team than expected, but it definitely makes sense from that perspective. So London's was less suspect than Seoul's, but also at the same time, I mean, Seoul's coming off a loss already, right? It was against New York, but I don't think these Korean teams take any loss against anybody lightly. I think they're willing to and open to changes, and we're going to see them overreact to things like a loss against a New York team when maybe you just go, well, on a different day we would have taken it, and just go from there.
All right.
But instead they seem to maybe over adjust a little bit. Definitely didn't show anything to make me as a Houston Outlaws fan nervous about the matchup the next day.
Right.
But yeah, this one was definitely a thonker. And listen, for what it's worth, London had their issues where they kind of backslid a little bit, and you know, they fell off a little bit a week or two ago.
Yeah, they lost to Boston.
Yeah, and listen, Boston's a good team, but London shouldn't be losing to Boston, I don't think. And so they seem to retool a little bit and try a different composition. And we talked about this, or I've talked about this. This is a team that I think is scarier the longer the season goes, right? Because they have more tools at their disposal. So when they learn to use them correctly, and you learn the best spots to bring them in and use them, it's only going to benefit them going forward. So they're a scary team. They're, in my mind, they're the clear number 2 now. But if I'm a New York fan, and I am, just not quite as much as you, I would be very nervous about them catching me, because they seem to be leveling up now. And a team that started off as high up as they did and is now leveling up and noticeably in their play, it's definitely a cause for concern. So by the transitive property, Seoul lost 4-0 to London. New York didn't beat Seoul 4-0.
Right.
So...
Therefore, they're going to win. No, wrong. I am certainly not super. I'm confident that New York is going to win. I'm certainly not so confident that I'm going to be brazen about it. Yeah, it'll be interesting if London, like you said, London has the most tools, and they've shown in the past with GC Busan that they are very willing and able to game plan specifically against specific opponents. So I'm imagining London, they're playing against who are they playing against next week? Are they playing against Houston? And they are also playing against New York. So, they're probably going to be practicing a lot for both. So that is actually helpful for me as a New York fan, that they're not going to be, like, Houston is no slouch. They're not going to be able to not put any practice towards that. And they're playing against them first. So maybe I luck out with that.
I'm sitting here going, man, if there's a matchup they're going to look at, like, they're not going to sleep on either of them, right?
They can't sleep on either. Yeah.
But if they're trying to win out, if they were smart, they'd put all their practice time into playing against Houston, make it into the stage playoffs, go from there. Right. But again, I think especially these Korean rosters, look, and we know for a fact, and Uber said it a little bit, like the Korean teams don't always scrim with you. Like, just because you're an Overwatch league doesn't mean the Korean teams think you're on their level and are willing to give you scrim time. So they might just kind of have this over cocky attitude about Houston. I don't know. You can't predict that or expect it until you see it. But if Houston 4-0s them, I'd say that's probably roughly what happened.
Yeah, I could I could see it going anyway. And let's not forget that London has mismanaged the team in a number of situations. So I think anything could happen. I'm hoping. My personal hope is that they're going to split their time evenly between Houston and New York, and they're just going to lose both. Like, screw it. I don't care.
Our attitude on London is very clear this week as a podcast. We hate you, and we hope for your ultimate demise.
Yeah.
We would like to see you not in the stage playoffs.
Yeah.
Talk to us in a week from now. It'll be a completely different story. For now.
I don't have any particular fandom towards London, so you know what? Screw them. I don't care if they never win a match again. Especially, yep. But let's move on. Before I never say that I'm not biased, but I try to not be super biased all the time, unless it's about New York, in which case I always am. Let's move on. We saw San Francisco shock 4-0 Florida Mayhem.
Florida's rough.
Yeah, this was the 15th time that it was the last straw for me for Florida.
Picked Florida to win twice this week.
I did. Well, here's the thing: like, if there was
how good would your pick 'em have been this week?
Oh my god, I would probably be top 10 right now.
Probably.
Here's the thing: like, if they this was the week for them to do it. So if you thought that they were going to, this was the week to pick it. Well. That ship has sailed. Stage 2, boys. Stage 2.
I love how in exactly 1 week you're going to be getting yourself hyped up about Zappos and telling yourself
so hyped. I'm so excited. If Florida let's see. I don't know. I'm not gonna make any crazy bets about buying a jersey right now. But I do, I do still need to get myself a Vic jersey at some point. I don't care if they never win a match again. But yeah, it's rough. And then came the big one. Seoul beats Houston Outlaws 3-2.
Yeah, a lot of takeaways here. Lynx are still sick for one, which honestly, when you look at how close this was,
Yeah.
and you look at, Houston comes out and wins Eichenwald anyways. If we're looking at the map records, I will go ahead and let you guys know the moment Houston drops an Eichenwald map. It hasn't happened yet, so it's definitely one of their better maps. We go into Horizon Lunar Colony, the map that they said they've literally never scrimmed with Clockwork in there. And it was close. It was a closely contested map, but unfortunately Seoul did take that one out. And that was like a huge advantage to me, right? Because Horizon and Junkertown were the Houston maps. Like, yeah, they hadn't lost on Eichenwald, but they hadn't played on it as many times as they had Lunar Colony, which was undefeated going into that as well. Listen, that map, I really think like they were actually able to answer Jake and to pay him enough attention and push him off the high ground enough to be able to complete the map. That's something that's a lot harder to do when you have Lynxer on Widowmaker in the back, sniping your Widowmaker and punishing people as they come in and try to get to them. So not having that split focus, of the two, Jake Rat and Lynxer on Widow just really hurt them. And they didn't really seem to get a good strategy or a plan for what to do with Clockwork. And where to position him, things like that. And let's be honest, as good as Clockwork played, they need, like, the role of Lynxer is playmaker. It is carry. That team revolves around him. He gets a lot of the work done, and Jake is definitely helpful. And when he's on Junkrat, he shares a little bit of that playmaking role as well. But it just wasn't quite enough on Horizon Lunar Colony. Houston continues their control struggles, which is fine if it wasn't the tiebreaker map, but they then take Junkertown to force map 5. And actually, it was kind of crazy, right? Because I was talking to Taco, another big Houston fan. I'm like, man, it's going to be really big to get control center in the first 2, right? Because they need to get one win, obviously, to even see the third stage. And then they'll have that momentum going into it, right? It didn't work out. It was the third map, but they won one. They won the map on, I think it was Gardens, right? So they kind of had that momentum anyways, right? They lost the first, won the second, but man, it was Zumba, right? His Zarya was just out of this world.
So insane. It was absolutely insane.
It was nutty. And the Junkrat kind of has no choice but to feed charge to the Zarya, and they just didn't quite have the closing power to finish him off, get the kill. And Seoul Dynasty narrowly escaped that match with the win there. And I've got to say, the only thing I'll say about it is, listen, you have to give respect to Clockwork, and you have to look at his performance as a positive for the team, for him, everything. All that stuff's true, and that's where your don't blame Clockwork comes in. But man, it's hard to think of this match as not being matchup as not being flipped if they don't have Lynxer. When it's that close and you're missing your best player, somebody that has the upside, and when they're playing at their best, to be one of the best players in this league, it is just a brutal loss. So I really think they would have won this. I think they would be looking at, they would have hit 20 with the map streak going through San Francisco, and then it would have carried over, right? Like, I think they would have won Eichenwald. I think they would have won Horizon Lunar Colony, probably still lost the control and ended the map streak there at like 22. But Junkertown's their home. They are not losing Junkertown anytime soon. I wouldn't expect it. It can certainly happen, but it's not likely. It hasn't happened yet. They've played on it 5 times. Unfortunately, they're done on Junkertown for the stage, and they will be off of it the next 2 matchups. But yeah, I don't know. As a Houston fan, this was brutal, right? Because this went from putting us in the stage playoffs, like, right, we hold the spot. We could have gone like 1-1, just leaned on our good map record. Like, even if we lost to London next week, it would have been fine. Still probably would have been in there because of how good the map record is. And now we're on the outside looking in. We need to win out, and then we need help, which is not the spot you want to be in. So as somebody that wanted to see my team in the stage playoffs, is a huge disappointment. But looking at it as a Houston fan, knowing it's a long season, listen, this says they don't need to be at full strength to take Seoul to the limit. They're going to be at their full strength later on down the year. So I was really happy about this match. As a Houston fan looking long term, the stage playoffs being so close on the horizon, unfortunately, kind of gives it this negative spin, or this negative, this bad taste in your mouth is the best way to put it, where you're just like, oh, it's an opportunity lost. And I just sit here going like, how sick were you, Linkser? Come on, man.
I was thinking the same thing, but I mean, it not even like it. I think of it less like he didn't want to play because he was sick, and like, you know, Mom, I'm sick, I don't want to go to school, and more of like, I'm going to be worse than Clockwork in my sick state.
Yeah,
so you have a better chance.
You have to assume
right.
That's the case when you look at it.
Yeah.
Until you know any different or know any better, but yeah, it's just one of those things. I mean, as a fan, you can't get rid of the feeling of like, even a zombie Linkser is probably pretty good. Right? Okay, I have to assume it's pretty good. Like, his Widow's still gonna hit a lot of shots.
Yeah, but I think he probably has more faith in Clockwork than we do.
He does. Oh, that I do for sure. But, you know, as a teammate, you have to. It's in there. And listen, the team's probably better for this experience on the overall, right? But I want the playoffs, man. I don't care. I want the stage playoffs.
Playoffs.
I
got rid of it.
It feels like a lost opportunity. But at the end of the day, very proud of my team. Very proud of the performance that they put on. And if nothing else, I think this definitely did a good, like, anybody who doubted, myself included, whether or not they should consider moving on from Clockwork, finding a different replacement, something like that. Listen, this guy can stay put. He showed a flexibility in his heroes in this match especially. He went toe-to-toe with Fleta. He didn't get the better of that exchange, but he didn't get embarrassed. He didn't get blown out.
He definitely did not feed like I think a lot of us would have thought, like, oh, God. Even though it seemed like every time the announcers brought up Clockwork, it was him getting killed or him doing something like bad, but on the overall, he definitely did fine.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about this matchup going into it is I would have thought the DPS core is the one spot where the Houston Outlaws would have had the opportunity to really put one over on Soul, right? Like, the tanks on both sides are really good, so call it a push. The supports on both sides are really good, but it's not a push. You've got to give it to the Soul Dynasty there. And as good as Fleta is, very possibly the best player in the league, when we're talking about a duo, Soul seems a little confused about what that second guy should be. So I really thought Houston had an advantage if they could have played their starters at DPS to just outshine them and outperform them and outpunish them. So I don't know. It, like I said, felt like a lost opportunity, but at the end of the day, as a Houston fan, it's pretty easy to look at it as a positive.
I do know one Soul DPS duo that would not be beatable. Fleta and Effect. Think about it. Think about it. Remember, everyone will owe me $5 when that trade happens. But let's move on. We saw Boston Uprising beat LA Gladiators 4-0, continuing the Boston domination. Man, they're the new Houston, right? They're 4-0ing everyone. They're winning.
Yeah, I mean, I expected the Gladiators to put up a bit of a fight here. I don't remember what I picked. Probably flipped it, right? Just because it's so much fun to root against Boston that it's.
I do like
Boston, the Gladiators. But yeah, I mean, I think Boston was the favorites going in here. LA is, like you said, like they're a different team sometimes, and they didn't show up in this one. I thought for the first time they really looked like they were suffering from a lack of depth, right? Because when you're playing against a team like Boston, we've talked about it, they're very one-dimensional. Yes, their dive is capable of beating anybody in the league, but it's counterable, and you can work to counteract it and play the right composition to beat it. And the Gladiators, I don't recall them really doing that. They just kind of sat there and got beat the whole time. So shout outs to Boston. This isn't the matchup this week of theirs that really, forced me to give them more respect. And but it was definitely one of their placement matches, right? Like, the Gladiators were a team that I couldn't decidedly say was below them. I thought they were going in. But it's just one of those things where, I don't know. The Gladiators are losing faith quite a bit, from me anyways, and they've got a lot of work to do. So let's see what they do in the signing stage.
Yeah, and Boston just seems like they're leveling up every week. They seem to be getting better. I mean, I think Houston did the same thing after week one. They just seem to get better and better and better and gel more and more and more. And I think Boston is doing a similar thing, putting on a similar performance.
Yeah, like a slower version of the same thing, to be perfectly honest. Because Houston was like, okay, stop making subs, literally never drop a map until they have to
Right.
until they're forced to make subs again.
Yeah.
Where Boston was like they needed some time. Like we thought a lot of these teams would, a lot of these Junkenstein's monsters teams. And we talked about going in how, is Huck going to be a genius, or is he going to be what it looks like he is right now after signing this team?
Yeah.
And right now you have to lean more towards the genius side.
Right.
I don't know that they're, they're not a locked in playoff team. They're not a playoff favorite yet, I don't think, but they're in that hunt, right? They're with a group of like 5 teams that are all right there and can do it. Maybe their lack of flexibility hurts them more going forward. Like that's the big thing I worry about with Boston is what happens when the meta shifts. What position is dive in? A team that can't run anti-dive because they don't have flexibility in their tanks. How do they adapt to a 3 or 4 tank meta that, it looks like we might be having coming up in the next stage? It's really impossible to say. So I don't know. Boston, you have to be scared of them for as long as they're playing in this stage. But at the end of the day, if your team can effectively run the counter dive, I think you can still shut them down. But nonetheless, they've pushed themselves out of a team where it's like, I can just sit here and say, well, they're probably going to get countered, so it's fine, to a team that no, they're good enough to beat the counter against subpar teams or teams that are less than them.
They can overpower.
Now we've
those.
just got to figure out exactly where they come into play. And
right.
My memory serves, they've got some pretty big placement style matchups coming up this week.
Oh,
so
yeah.
we're gonna learn a lot.
This week is huge for them because they're playing against they're playing against Fusion, who is not really in the playoff race. I mean, they're like you need to do get your abacus out to see how they get in the playoffs, but they've got the match against them, and then they have the match against Outlaws, which literally has the potential to just be a win and in for both teams, depending on how the chips line up.
Yeah, basically depending on how Seoul does this week, it could very well be on Saturday at, what is that going to be? It's the start of 2, so 4 our time. They'll be playing for the right to play again in the first round of the stage playoffs 4 hours later. So if that happens, and if we're in that situation, I think we're going to see a level of intensity in an Overwatch match we haven't seen yet, because it's that first hint at, and this isn't even the real playoffs, right? So it's going to get better. But yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting if that works out that way.
Yep, it will. It'll start. I know your hatred of Boston will be at an all-time high, I believe.
Oh yeah. I will be saying things out loud at my monitor or at my TV that I could not ever say on this show, guaranteed. But I mean, but listen, Boston's proven at this point to be a good enough team, and I know there were people out there that were like, I want to see them Boston win just so Deathblow loses it. Like, I hate to break it to you guys, I've got a lot of practice at losing to Robert Kraft-owned Boston teams that I hate. Like, I'm not going to fly off the handle and lose it or anything like that. I will gloat a lot when Houston. Not if Houston. I will gloat a lot.
Yeah, it's one that I have a hard time calling, but I don't know.
It's going to be close, but we'll talk about the matchup when we get
there. I don't even remember who I picked, but we'll talk about that. Then the last day we saw London beat Shanghai 4-0. Is there anything to talk about here?
Nope. Moving on.
Okay. Didn't think so. NYXL beats Dallas Fuel 3-1. I will say that was a cool 500 points for me in Pick'em, because I barely ever give XL the ability to 4-0 a team. I just don't jinx myself.
You only bet them 5-0.
Yeah, it's either 5-0 or 3-1.
Yeah, if there's a matchup I didn't watch a ton of, it was this one, because I anticipated the stomp. But it didn't quite happen. So I'll put it to you, because I know you watched it very closely. What were your takeaways from this?
Well, the takeaway was that Dallas seems like they're creeping up a little bit. Like, they looked decent, at least at points. The Anubis map was very close. I believe it went like 3 rounds or 3 cycles through of taking and defending and taking point 2 and defending. But it was like, so Anubis specifically, I believe NYXL took 6 points, so they captured it 3 times, and then they won 6-5 on that map. The first 3 takes, or the first 2 takes for Dallas looked quite good, and they weren't ahead, but they made up a lot of time on their second take of it, I believe. And then the last take, it just seemed like Dallas was just out of no pun intended. They were out of fuel going into that last push, and it really kind of continued on to be like that. Like there were signs of, okay, Dallas can execute a strategy. They can do it well. They have good players. They have good, but it's just like XL was just another level ahead of them. So, I mean, on a strategy and also on a skill gap overall differential as well. So I don't know. I mean, Dallas, they have work to do, man. And I think that even if we can't, even if we don't know exactly how and where AKM is going to be used, or actually, I don't even think we've necessarily confirmed it. Like, it's not official 100% confirmed. It's very likely that he's on the Dallas Fuel based on a tweet from the owner. You're muted. But
yeah, as Uber said in Around the Payload, like it was just like Hastro trying to beat Jacob Wolf from reporting at first, and it was like there's nothing signed yet. It hasn't happened.
Sure, but all signs that we have so far lead to it being the case. I mean, they went back to Envious, right? So, and that hasn't worked. So what's next? Like Envy 2.0? I don't know. I mean, I think there are definitely very good players on the Dallas Fuel. They're just not able to close. Like, I think, like I've been saying before, is like the old style that Envious won so many games on was, we're better than you. We're gonna overpower you with whatever we do. And now Envy is, specifically Envy is not good enough to do that against these Overwatch League teams. Like, they're not as good as the New York Excelsior, so they can't overpower anyone. They're getting dominated, so they have to adapt to the meta, and they're just not doing that. So I think switching things up is really going to help. They just need to have a cohesive way to do that. Like, who is the captain? Is it Taimu? I don't know. He's a little unhinged. Is it Effect? Effect is really not a vocal player. Maybe AKM just comes in as the captain and can rally the troops. I mean, Seagull is a very cerebral and smart player, but is he a captain? Like, I don't know. It doesn't seem like that's the case. So I think they need to really focus in and, rally around a player, have him be a captain. Maybe it's Taimu. I don't know. Like, but get to a point where you're rallying the team around you and have a cohesive strategy, and then get good at that. Rather than just like, we've won a million matches, we're just gonna keep doing the same thing. Wrong. Well, you can. It's just not working at 1-7.
Yeah, 2 very winnable matchups though for them coming up. So they've still got that chance to hit that 3 wins that we said they need, and I don't think any team will be more benefited by the meta shift of the new stage.
Yeah. And potentially the AKM trade is not the only thing, or the AKM signing is not the only thing. We don't know. But yeah. So then moving on, the last match we saw of the week was Uprising beat LA Valiant 4-0.
Yeah. So this is the one that obviously really got everybody's attention. Notably, LA Valiant played with Verbo instead of Unco all week. Unco apparently not sick, but injured, has an upper body injury, as it was termed. So he was unavailable in this weekend's matches. And also, Silk Thread was out. I believe he was sick in this matchup, not the first one, I believe. So definitely a different lineup from the LA Valiant, but I've got to say, Verbo looked just fine in the first matchup, and honestly, the difference between Agilities and Silk Thread full time shouldn't be a deal breaker for this roster. So it's easy to want to make excuses if you're an LA Valiant fan, but I think you need to just kind of come to terms with it and say that you were pretty close to at full capacity here. And, if it was a 3-2, maybe like Houston and Seoul, you could maybe make that argument a little bit better, but you got dominated up and down across the board here, LA. So they're going to have to look inward and try to figure out why that is. I don't have any long-term worries about the LA Valiant, but
No.
I'll say this. They're probably who I thought they were, right? Like when they came out strong out of the gates, and I'm like, I'm not sold on this team yet. Like I'm just not buying in. This is kind of why, right? Because I thought I didn't think they were going to go from a team that was a huge disappointment in contenders to a team that was at the top of the standings, the best of the West, as you want to call it. And it doesn't have to be a division like that. It doesn't have to just be Korean teams 1 through 3. We've seen times when that's not the case in the standings already, and it's going to happen again in the next stage. So it's going to be interesting to see how they rebound. They obviously want to get their players back, be at full strength, but this matchup was about Boston to me, right? Like they put themselves on the map here. It was a statement game for them. They said, yes, all we play is dive, and that's all we play really, really well, but we play it so well that knowing that doesn't just help you. Like you still have to figure out how to beat it. Dreamcasper and Striker continue to be super, super impressive. There's really nothing else you can say about these guys. They're clearly at a level that we didn't expect them to be at, but it's going to be really interesting to see, how they continue to grow, because obviously they're a team that's getting better at a rapid pace. We don't yet know what their ceiling is. But again, I have a feeling they're going to, hit the road bump of the new stage and having to readapt to that. And if that's not a dive friendly stage and, a dive friendly meta, we could see them fall rapidly again too. I don't know what the verdict is on the Boston Uprising yet. Obviously they're a team you have to take seriously, but until they show that depth, right? I think you have to assume them to be significant underdogs against the 3 Korean teams and a pretty sizable question mark as the meta shifts. It's not me trying to protect Houston or say that Houston's a better team. I promise, guys. I say the same thing about Houston. I don't know how they're going to adapt to the meta going forward. Right now, they get away with playing Jake on Junkrat a lot, and it's to their benefit because he's probably the best Junkrat in Overwatch League. So obviously, you want to be on that as much as you can. In a similar way, Boston favors one lineup, and it's in vogue right now, but it doesn't mean it'll stay that way. So they're teams that are honestly probably pretty close to the same tier. And both have similar question marks. I don't know. It's going to be a tough or an interesting race here and a phenomenal match, I think, to close out the stage here, or the second last to close out the stage before the playoffs begin.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if the meta switches up. And does Boston have something ready to go? Are they able to just play it? And if they do find their groove, are they like, just because they were experts at dive doesn't mean they can do that for every meta, right? It's not like, oh, well, Boston's the linear team, they can only play one thing. It's like, maybe they're not able to do that for, triple tank meta or whatever comes out of the stage 2 meta. But if they are, how long is it going to take them to get up to speed? Are they going to be at this point where it's like, well, after 5 games, then all of a sudden they start being better than half the teams? But like, is it too late by then?
And that's a lot of the fun of Overwatch League, right? As we see the stages go through, you're going to have teams that, like, if I'm right, in Houston and Boston are, the best of the West in this current meta, and then they're not next season, but where are they, right? Because if they're 10 and 11, if they're in the Dallas Fuel and the Florida Mayhem territory, that might be detrimental. But if they're in the Philadelphia Fusion and the LA Valley in this SF Shock, in that range, it could be just fine. We don't necessarily have to care. Like, you just have to be in the top 6 going into the legit end of season playoffs. And then from there have the meta favor you. So it's going to be crazy. That's one of the awesome things about parity, and that's one of the things that when we asked Nate about parity in our interview with him, he said the stages, the meta shifts, things like that were going to really help. And you can see that, and we can predict it and see it outright. Not predict it as in how our team's going to react and do, but know things are going to shake up and things are going to be.
Yeah, so the long and short of it is Overwatch League is awesome, and you should be watching Overwatch League because there's so many stories, there's so much everything that come out of it.
Even in the 4-0s, like, there's so much to learn.
Yeah, I mean, except for the, Spitfire versus Dragons. But, in the non-Shanghai 4-0s, there's a lot to learn. But real quick rundown of the standings going into the last week before the end of the stage. So this is very important here. We've got London Spitfire at 7-1, NYXL at 7-1. Then we've got Seoul at 6-2, Houston Outlaws, Boston Uprising, LA Valiant, and Philly Fusion, all at 5-3. San Francisco Shock and LA Gladiators at 3-5. Fuel and Mayhem at 1-7, and then Shanghai Dragons at 0-8. So definitely an interesting. This week is going to be very interesting. So let's move on and let's break down the matches we've got next week. Starting with Wednesday, we've got Shanghai Dragons versus Dallas Fuel. We've both got Dallas here at a 3-1, and the fans on highnoonpick'em.com, 91% of them have Dallas winning. What are the takeaways here, Death?
The takeaway is that if Dallas Fuel doesn't win this matchup, they need to hit the reset button hard, bring in a lot of people, and go from there. Other than that, let's just say we spent a lot of time on recap, man. Move along.
Yeah, I agree. Only thing I have is that Undead seems to have leveled up a bit. He did really well in the XL game, even though they lost. Moving on, we've got San Francisco Shock versus LA Gladiators. Death, you've got 3-2. I've got 3-1 in favor of Gladiators. The fans have a 72% favor to Gladiators. Anything here?
This is going to be really close. I think these teams are really evenly matched. They're really, it's, you know, all their weaknesses seem to line up. Like they seem to have very, very similar weaknesses. San Francisco has depth on their roster, but they don't really use it because a lot of it's underage, things like that. But you know, this is a placement game, right? Like we're still having these placement games through however many weeks. This is one that'll really help narrow down and focus in the power ranks and you know where we can look at these teams going forward. But for the time being, slight edge to the LA Gladiators here. I just think they have, you know, they have inconsistencies in their performances, but I think they're a more solid, stable lineup. And they get less inconsistent performances from their players, right? Like it's teamwork stuff that breaks down with LA, not necessarily individual performances so much. It's a slight edge to LA, but not very confident.
Yeah. San Francisco Shock is in a really weird spot because their team potentially very drastically changes next stage. So who knows how much time they're actually putting into this stage's practice, but I don't know. Moving forward, we've got LA Valiant versus Seoul Dynasty. We both got it at 3-1 in favor of Seoul. The fans have Seoul at 93%.
Yeah, 93% sounds high to me. I don't know. Listen, this would be a lot closer if LA didn't just have the letdown performance at the end of last week. I have to assume a little bit of that's going to carry over. They're going to be trying to get it back at the beginning instead of just playing their game, and they're going to be a little bit distracted. So I'm going to go with Seoul here. They have plenty to get back as well. Like they shouldn't be feeling safe or feeling comfortable as badly as I need this one to go in the way of LA. If you go for the Houston to be able to make it into the stage playoffs, it doesn't seem likely looking at it. It could definitely go either way, but I'm going to give it to Seoul 3-1.
Moving on, Philly Fusion versus Boston Uprising. We've both got Boston ahead here. I've got them in 5. You've got them in 4. And the fans, this one's a little bit lower, 77% in favor of Boston.
I don't have a die handy, or I'd roll it on the spot to tell you what I think is going to happen here, which Philly team's going to show up. But the map pool's tied. Boston's just a more consistent team. I don't know how you can pick Philadelphia when it's a 50% chance they're just not going to show up, especially against a team that's on the uptick, uprising, if you will, and it just seems like an easy pick to me to look at this one and think Boston's going to get it. It's far from a lock because what if the other Philly team does show up? But yeah, looking at it,
paid more by picking Boston here.
Yeah, I think you just have to pick Boston, and don't be surprised at all if you're wrong.
Yeah, this is one where pick whichever team's colors you like better and go with that one. Moving on, we've got Florida Mayhem versus New York Excelsior. Death, you've got New York in favor 4-0. I, of course, have the illustrious 5-0 for New York, and the fans agree with us 98% wise. Anything here?
Nope.
Okay, moving on. Finally, we've got the big match here: London Spitfire versus Houston Outlaws. And Death, what? Is this right? Did you pick London here?
Yeah, I know. You guys love to think I'm biased, but I'm not. And the map pool here doesn't favor Houston. They get to play on Eichenwald, but I don't think they might get Horizon Lunar Colony too. I don't know. I'm going to take London in a 3-2 here. There's no Junkertown for them to lean on. Koth continues to be a struggle for them. Where London has had issues on Koth, but nothing like Houston has had. When we look at the map win percentages, I think I looked at it earlier and I'm remembering it as a little bit lopsided. But yeah, when you look at control, we're talking about a 50% map win percentage for London. So it's definitely their weak game mode. But Houston's at 40%. And obviously this is going to be, could go either way. I don't want to sit here and say, I think it's a clear London's favorite. I think this is close to a coin flip, but I think the map performances from Houston have been telling, right? And I think if they got to play them on at least Junkertown, they would probably flip this one and be able to take it. But listen, when you are looking at it, the map pool and going, well, Houston really might go to 5 here, like with how bad they are on control in comparison to all the other game modes, and the 5th map being a control map, it's difficult to predict them to win in 5. So I'm going to have to say London is the most likely victor here. But I will give it 3-2, right? Because I think they've got a sizable advantage on Eichenwald. When we look at London Spitfire on that map in particular, let's see if I can look at it. Yeah, they're only 2-1, so 67% win percentage. Again, Houston hasn't dropped it. They've won it with Clockwork. They've won it with, what I mean? They've shown depth and they've shown good strategy on the map. They've beaten good teams there. It's definitely not going to be a 4-0, I don't think, in either direction. So a slight edge to London.
Yeah, I mean, I give the edge to London as well. It's just, man, I thought you had some heart and some belief, man.
I do. My rooting and my cheering will be very one-sided. But when you look at it,
try to win that pick'em.
It looks like a tough match. It looks like it has very strong potential to go the difference. There's no number of map advantage here. Like they both have 5 maps on the week, so. When you don't have anything to kind of flip it and give it to favor Houston, you just look at London as an overall slightly stronger team at the moment.
Yeah. Honestly, though, so this is a 77% in favor of London, which is probably pretty close to accurate here. But 77% of the fans are picking London here. I could see this being flipped, honestly. I wouldn't bet on it necessarily, but again, if you're looking to jump up, this could be a big chance to do that, because I think it won't be a huge upset because it's only 77%, but still.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm wrong and I'm looking at it like in the control map flips, right, which London is far from a lock on control, as we can see. Unless it's that's it. Man, it's hard to look at. Some of the colors on these don't make sense, but it really all depends, right? I think it's Ilios here, which is why I favored it, because London's 3-1 on Ilios, and 50% on the other 2 maps in the control map pool. Listen, if I'm wrong on Koth, this very, very quickly becomes a 3-1 win for Houston. So if you're looking for a spot, I don't know that 77% is really all that. Yeah, probably pretty close to a coin flip.
Pretty decent spot to flip there. Moving on, LA Gladiators versus Dallas Fuel here. Death, you've got Gladiators in 4. I've actually got Dallas in 5 here, and the fans have Gladiators 65% favored here.
Yeah, I mean, Gladiators do have consistency issues, but I get your point. Dallas has been really, really consistent lately. So, you could be right. They could get it. The problem is that the Dallas Fuel have been consistently bad, and it's been across the board. And listen, this is a very winnable match for them. But guys, this is like Blevins going to that Florida well over and over and over again. Like, I'm done. Listen, I believe in you long term. I think you'll rebound. Until you do it, I'm not gonna, put my pick'em points at the, at your disposal to take away from me. I've got to get back in front of the Blevins, because, like, again, we don't make adjustments to our pick'ems after we make them on Monday. We stick with them. So when we find out links or sits, I have to sit there and not flip that matchup, no matter what it does to my pick'em rank. So I've fallen. I want to get it back, and I need to get above the Blevins. So this is the match where I'm going to get it done.
Yeah. I don't know. The difference between Florida and Dallas here is that Dallas has started to look better. Florida has somehow started to look worse. So like they've dropped down from being at the 11 seed. They've dropped down. I think Dallas,
The only thing I'll counter with that is Dallas looks like they're playing smarter, not better.
I will agree with that. And we'll move on because we're quickly running out of time. We've got Seoul Dynasty versus San Francisco Shock. We both have Seoul winning. I have them in 4. Literally, I have it Seoul 3-1 here, literally for strategy reasons only, because a 4-0 only covers one result, whereas a 3-1 can cover 3-1, 3-0, and 3-2. So I'm literally just playing the spread here. But yeah, it's probably gonna be a 4-0. The fans, we got to it finally. Yeah. The fans, no one is picking San Francisco Shock to win this match. It is 100% in favor of Seoul.
And of all the matchups to be 100%,
I know. Like, you don't think Baby Bay is going to pop off?
Obviously, this should be a heavy Seoul favorite.
97, 98. I'll even take a 99% here.
99 would make sense. I wouldn't even blink an eye.
There's not one
Seoul
guy
is legitimately struggling, and San Francisco has playmakers. Like, I can't call this one 100% no matter how bad I want to.
Free
like
IDQD is all I have to say.
I'll take Seoul 4-0, and I think we have to count a 100% as a 4-0 from the fans as well.
Yeah. Let's move on. LA Valiant is playing against Shanghai Dragons. Again, I picked LA Valiant 3-1 for the same reason I just explained. You've got Valiant at 4-0. The fans only have a 99% for Valiant. Is there any chance that we see any wins out of Shanghai here?
Sure. Does that monstrosity of a team that showed up against Boston show up? I mean, you can't predict it, but I mean, right. it's there's a world where it happens. Like,
and Undead has started to look good.
Oh my God. And can we just at bare minimum get Uber to just cast every play? Like, I just want him on a separate Twitch feed, just coming up with crazy things to say about Undead while he plays. Undead had the #1 spot in our plays of the week this week.
Yep.
And I'd say, like, as awesome as the play was, and it was, I put it there like 99% because of what Uber was saying in the background while he was doing it. Just epic commentary.
Yep.
For sure. So yeah, I don't know. That's the best thing that I can say about Shanghai from this past week. So I had to mention it in this match.
For sure. Moving on, last day of stage 1, we've got New York Excelsior versus London Spitfire. We've both got New York coming out of this one 3-1. The fans are at 66% in favor of New York here.
Yeah, rightfully so. I mean, it's about the right percentage, right? Like, London is a team that has the upward capabilities to be able to take down anybody. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they're the #2 team right now behind New York. This is going to be a bloodbath. And listen, London could potentially, depending on how their first matchup goes, I'm blanking on who it's against. So
it's against Outlaws.
Oh, it's against Houston. London could literally, if they fall to Houston, be playing for their stage playoff lives at this point. Mm-hmm. They're a team that can fall out because of the quality of their opponents. So this is going to be one to watch. We could literally have an incredibly epic Saturday lined up with the playoff, the stage playoff ramifications that can come out of the first 2 matchups in this day. It could be huge. I'm really, really excited about this one. Right now, New York they've been consistent for longer, right? And we're starting to learn some of the questions that I had about them early on, right? They were questions. They weren't, I'm sure they're wrong, and they're answering them, and everything's making sense. So everything's lining up for New York right now. They're a team that started at the top, and they're on an upward trajectory somehow. So yeah, I'm really excited for them to play this one out. And listen, I want to see London show me that this wasn't Seoul's thonker of a lineup. I want them to come out and do really well against New York, but I do want to see New York.
I don't want to see that. I hope that they forfeit the match for some reason. I don't care.
Me too. Yeah. I want their playoff spot. Me too.
Yeah. It's definitely going to be crazy. The one thing that gives me a little bit of allows me to sleep a little bit easier this week is that they do, like, London literally does have to practice at least kind of equally for both matches, because both of them matter. Like you said, London could very potentially 0-2 and just be done. No playoff spot. Sorry. Bye. See you next stage. They need to win. Both New York and London need to win at least one of their matches. I think if they win one, they're locked, and then the match against them between them is kind of, if they both win first, then their match doesn't matter, I don't think, except it matters for first and second. So it's going to be exciting one way or the other. Either London is playing for their lives. It's unlikely that New York is going to lose to Mayhem. So either London is playing for their playoff life or they're playing for first place, which is huge. So it's going to be, like you said, a bloodbath one way or the other. Next, we've got Houston Outlaws versus Boston Uprising. We've both got Houston winning here. I just picked a 3-2 just because. And this is the closest one we've seen from the fans since I think even this is like week 1. Houston at a 56%. Favored by the fans here.
Yeah, this one's going to be interesting. Obviously, this is a placement match that I don't think we saw as a placement match until the end of last week wrapped up. But when we look at it, Outlaws do have a 1-map advantage here. They got 5 maps on the week to Boston's 6. And I think it's even Koth that flips for Houston.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if they're smart, they just don't prepare for Koth this week and just say, whatever, it's fine. And just try to focus in on the other ones. So there's a slight advantage there to Houston. But the reason I'm picking Houston 3-1 is I think these lineups, very specifically, skill of the teams aside, where they finish regular season, right now in this meta, I think Houston has a distinct advantage against Boston because of the compositions that they play. So we've got Boston being dive specialist, and we've got Houston being a team that kind of like runs this anti-dive by default. We see a lot of the Orisa from Muma already. Obviously, Jake is, right there as among, if not the best Junkrats in the league. So I just think they kind of want to play the composition that's best against Boston anyways. Is Boston good enough to beat their anti-dive? Absolutely. I'm not predicting it to happen because when I think about how Boston's dive's going to do, I just think of that shot from Linkser on Junkertown where Logix blinks right past him and like, I don't have time to register that he blinked, but yet there's the headshot and he's dead. Like, I just don't see this team struggling against the dive composition.
Right.
It's going to force Boston to have to outplay them significantly. This is all obviously based on Linkser being there. If he's not, all bets are certainly off, and I would flip the pick immediately if I were you guys. But yeah, I mean, I just think the way these teams match up, as close as they are in overall skill level, I really do think they line up very, very well, and Houston has a distinct advantage here just on comps that the players like.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is another one where, depending on the results earlier, this could very well be a win and in for that 3rd spot in the playoffs. So definitely a lot of implications here. I agree with a lot of what you're saying. Houston is slightly favored here with their composition, but like, man, Striker and Dreamcasper, they've almost ascended to a point where I hear them, or I feel that they're at a similar level in terms of me being afraid of what they can do as Carpe and Shadowburn, where it's like, yeah, Dreamcasper and Striker, they can just overpower anything. Like, depends on what they want to do or what they can do. They have the capacity to do it. So I wouldn't necessarily fault anyone for picking Boston here. Obviously, this is the closest in terms of the fans' thoughts in a while. So I do think Houston is going to pull this one out. I just think they're a little bit more consistent, and like you said, that the lineup matches up a little bit better. But Boston definitely has that capacity to pop off. And agree 100%.
Don't underestimate the map pool. The map pool is not, they've got Eichenwald fine, but they don't have their Junkertown and I think Horizon. So it's going to be rough.
Yep. But yeah, if Linkser is still out for whatever reason, like, not looking good. But last match of the stage, at least the regular season stage. I don't even know what you call the regular stage. We've got
Florida. Come up with a term.
Yeah, the last match of the regular stage is Florida Mayhem. It's definitely not that. Florida Mayhem versus Philadelphia Fusion. We've both got Fusion at 3-1. The fans have Philly at 99%. Anything to say here?
This will get really interesting if Bad Philly shows up, but I'll stand by my pick even if Bad Philly shows up. We've been talking about it since the beginning of the league. Florida desperately needs the acquisition period. They need the fresh blood in. So I don't know, just try Florida, do your best.
Good luck.
Bring
Bring it to 5, Florida, and I will I'll drink from that well as early as
we'll go right
stage 2 game 1.
You'll just be right back in your corner as soon as.
Yeah, it's like for stage 2 versus NYXL. It's like, yeah, I got mayhem at 3-2 here. I'm sorry. Had to do it. But Death, we wanted to talk a little bit before we go about the 4 teams who are on the outside looking in. Obviously, both NYXL, I guess actually NYXL, Seoul, and London have the spots to lose. But we want to talk about the playoff math here that allows these 4 teams to get in. So why don't you start us off with Houston?
Sure. So yeah, I think obviously all these teams are at least one game behind, right? So they're all going to need help. So all 3 of the Korean teams control their destiny into the stage playoffs. They just have to do their job and win, though 2 of them play against each other. So it's a little easier.
Well, they have to win one. They both London and New York have to win their first match. And then if that's the case, the second match is for placement.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Well, that'll matter a lot, right? Because the first team gets a bye. So that'll definitely be interesting to keep tabs on. But of the teams on the outside looking in, I actually, by the way, if you're taking the second one, I think the second best odds is the third on the list. So you might want to take it out of order. But I think the most likely team to get in here from the outside looking in is Houston. And this is on the back of their superior map record to everybody else. That's the reason why they have the tiebreaker right now. I believe they do still control it on Seoul after their 4-0 loss to oh my gosh, should they lose to? Oh, London last week, 4-0. I think that puts them significantly behind Houston. They only made up one map in their win against Houston last week. So Houston needs to beat London and Boston, and they also need Seoul to lose to either the Valiant or the San Francisco Shock. And I think they go in. Of course, the website doesn't tell me their map win percentages. It doesn't give me the tiebreaker. So I could be wrong on any of these. But looking at it, this is kind of what I think needs to happen for them to have a decent shot at it. This doesn't guarantee them, but I think Houston needs to beat London and Boston and also have Seoul drop a match as well.
Yep. And then the second team here we've got is Boston, who is in a similar spot as Houston.
Yeah, so Boston is in a similar spot. They need to beat Philly and Houston. They also need Seoul to lose to LA or San Francisco, but they also need the added help of like the right number of map wins for them and the right number of map losses to happen for whichever team is going to end up tied with them, right? Because they currently sit back a little bit in the standings. I've got to scroll up to see them. They're in second place of the 5 and 3 teams, but honestly, I don't think they have the second best chance. They're probably in the third for this race. That being because the LA Valiant, I believe, have the next best chance. They play against Seoul. So when we talk about other teams needing Seoul to lose, LA Valiant already has that baked into what they can control, right? So they need to beat Seoul and Shanghai, and then they need to get the maps to work out, much like Boston does, to be up ahead of them. But because they control whether or not Seoul loses, they have an advantage here. Also worth noting, they need the maps to work out. Like if Boston beats Houston and if they get their 2 wins, they also have like a 3-way race where the tiebreakers are really going to come into play. So yeah, it's going to be interesting between these 2 teams. Boston and LA, they're probably really, really close to each other as far as percentages go, but I am far from a mathematician. So I will leave that to smarter people than me to figure out percentages.
Yeah. What happens if the maps are tied too? Does it just go off of who won the matchup?
I would get, until they drop the rule book, we can't know for sure, but I would look at like the head-to-head, which will be really interesting because then we might have to look at what the third tiebreaker is if like Houston and LA are tied.
Right,
so,
who haven't played, right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it'll get really interesting fast, and we could have a mathematical mess on our hands.
We might
the last team that I can't say definitively is eliminated from stage playoff contention are the Philadelphia Fusion. And the way that you get in is to, come on, what, the Super Bowl wasn't good enough? Stop being greedy. Just let Houston get in. Jeez.
Just give up, man. Come on. No,
Stop it.
Fraggy has been riding that high noon bump way too long.
Oh my God. Revoked. Revoking the bump.
He took the bump. He won contenders, and he's like, no, guys, I'm going to keep doing.
All I know is if Trevor May wins the World Series, we are transcending Overwatch League. We are going just wide with all sports, all competitions. I don't even care. We're just going to interview literally anybody that'll talk to us. And as long as we keep our current record of bumping performances for people that we have on,
people will come on.
We're going to do phenomenal.
We're going to do great. Then what we need to do.
Don't tell them we interviewed Florida people or Dallas people. It's not going to help.
That never happened. I can't think of a time
them
that
from the podcast.
All I know is that Tavik still hasn't been on the show, and he's getting what I like to call the high noon curse. And we had
Mineral and Logics were just ploys to get closer to Tavik. That's what we wanted. Sorry, guys.
Dude, why are you blowing my spot here, man? But
we already got him.
That's true. That's true.
But in all seriousness, Philly needs to win out, and they need a lot of help. They need the soul to lose. They need the maps to work out. Like I don't know for sure that it's even possible. Philly fans just don't.
They need to hope Soul gets 4-0'd twice, and they need to win.
Right. Just work on drawing hearts around Nick Foles' name in your notebook all weekend, and hope you win your matches to get your way in and find yourself in a position for a later stage playoffs or the end of season playoffs. Obviously, they're in a great position for the later stage playoffs. Yeah. So this week is very important, but I think it's really unlikely they find their way.
Yeah, but that's going to be it for this episode. Death, do we have any last minute stuff to go over here?
Oh, well, we have the iTunes reviews that I don't know if we have any, because why would I be used to checking for them in advance or anything like that? So why don't you do a little bit of the normal sign off?
It's only 104 episodes in, but yeah, guys.
So do a little bit of the sign off, and then I'll let you know if we have them.
A couple of quick reminders, guys. If you want to support us, there's a couple ways to do it. A, follow us on all the places. You can find all the links at highnoonpodcast.com. B, if you want to support us financially, there's now 2 ways to do that. You can use our link, our Razer affiliate link, if you're going to be buying Razer equipment, or even I think they have software too. Anything Razer related, Razer phone. I don't know if we get stuff off the phone, but if you're thinking of buying any new peripherals, whether it be keyboard, mouse, headset, etc., and you're thinking about Razer and you're looking for a bump towards Razer, use our link. I honestly, Razer was one of the big ones that I always wanted to work with because I've used their products for so long. And whenever people ask me what mouse or keyboard I should get, I just tell them Razer, because they've been so great for so long for me. So use that link. It should be up very soon, if not already, if you are looking for, if you can't wait, and you really want to buy something Razer, just message us either on Discord or tweet at us on at High Noon Podcast on Twitter. I'll get you the link, even if it's not on the website, our website yet. You can also go to patreon.com/High Noon Podcast. We've gotten a lot of new patrons lately, and I can't I can't say enough. It is super, super, super helpful for us, and helping us do the cool stuff that we want to do with the show. There's so much more stuff that I want to do as well. And
if there was infinite time in the day, I can count, we would probably be putting out twice as much content as we are.
Yeah.
But speaking of ways to help the podcast, we do have new iTunes reviews, 2 of them. So a great podcast titled review, 5 stars from La Bellman. So that's the Bellman from Discord. Shout outs, buddy. Really appreciate it.
It's the French Bellman.
Yeah, the French version of his French brother or something. But great podcast by great people. The coverage of OWL is fantastic, and the Discord is also great. Keep up the great work. Signed the Bellman. So he's got a bit of an identity crisis about whether or not he's French. But the next one here, and boy, I'm gonna love reading this one. By Jake What. It's a 5-star review. Your one-stop shop for competitive Overwatch. The Blevins and Deathblow have created a Top Gear. I think it was supposed to be top tier competitive Overwatch podcast. Top Gear. I like good show. Overwatch podcast that combines all facets of OWL into a one-stop shop to meet all your OWL and Overwatch needs. The personalities bring you in, and the diversity of the content keeps you locked in. If you haven't listened yet, dive in, because the outlaws are coming for you. Scream up! All that was in there. I didn't make up any of that. And that was legit the review. Thank you so much,
including
Jake
the finger guns.
Hands down. That's for you, Jake and Bellman. Hands down, my favorite iTunes review to read ever. So if you want to make me very happy, just put in Pro Outlaws things.
Yeah, but what about from Prova the Nova back in the day? Okay, not going to go into that conspiracy. That is going to be it, guys. Huge thanks to all the live viewers that showed up. We do record live every Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern-ish, twitch.tv/High Noon Podcast. We record all of the shows live when we can at twitch.tv/High Noon Podcast. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday are our recording days, and then sometimes we just have random interviews mixed in during the week. So definitely follow us at highnoonpodcast.com. All the links are at highnoonpodcast.com. That's everything. That's all the stuff. Guys, enjoy Overwatch League. This is going to be a big week for playoff implications and where people sit going into stage 2. So it's going to be a good one. If you're listening live, make sure you check us out tomorrow for the new episode of Around the Payload. We got some great guests. I will be tweeting out that guest list and all the good stuff very shortly. But that is going to be it, guys. For Deathblow, I'm the Blevins. And remember, it's high noon.
Got his boots and he put on his hat. Threw the coin away that same day. It's in his past and he's not looking back. He says, finding mine now, God's my way. He's not good, but he sure ain't bad. He'll make amends for the sins that he has. He says, I'll change the world one bullet at a time till I find mine.
If Florida can get 2 wins this last game, I will pick them to 4-0 Soul Dynasty in stage 2. Guaranteed.